G, you got something to say? Get over here and say it.
All
I'm gonna
right.
need a full sentence out of you. Hey.
Hey, man, what's up?
Usually three or four things at the same time
All
at this
right,
point.
dude, I'm with you, man. I'm hoping my dog stops barking in the background. Cut that out.
Yep, we got dogs, we got children, we got all kinds of stuff. But this is a little more relaxed atmosphere, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Um, what's going on? How things been since we last spoke?
Things are good, man. I listened to the podcast. Man, you guys make a guy sound great. So thanks for doing that. It was pretty cool. And I don't sound as dumb as I thought I would.
Competence shows through. All I got to do is clean up the audio, and your competence comes through easily. So that's never a problem. The sound is the questionable part. Is like you said, dogs barking and everything else going on, and who's
Yeah.
got the hissing in the background, and Bobby's usually calling in because he's busy doing something else.
Yeah, but his was fine. It was you could definitely tell he was on the phone, but or maybe I just knew he was on the phone. If you were just listening, you may not pick it up. But
Hopefully not. But
you
this
know,
is we're what do we call it? What's it? It's an indie podcast. Is that it? Yes, we're indie podcasters,
indie
which
podcast.
yes,
Yeah,
evidently that just means we don't have any money.
yeah,
And we don't have any supporters or sponsors or anything yet. So we're getting there. At this point, it's just fun. It's for our own people. And one of the things I keep quoting and I keep going back to it because it's helping me stay focused right now is something Greg Rupert of Reserve My Court said. He said when he described how Reserve My Court got started, he solved a problem that he had for himself for his own neighborhood. And he said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to fix this thing. And I'm going to create something for us. And I'm going to make it work. And it's going to be great. And he wasn't trying to take over the world. He didn't have some grand plans for his fancy new software. He just fixed a problem right there in front of him. And then someone came up and said, how about you offer this to the world? And it goes on from there. So I think for things like us and in a podcast like this and these kinds of conversations we'll have more of, which is a lot of fun, especially on a rainy day in Atlanta like it is today, to be able to talk about something interesting,
yeah.
especially if we disagree or we have different points of view to say, hey, let's in this case talk about the merits of jail. I found your article on bullsharksports.net. And before I go any further, why did you choose .net and not .com?
Okay, here's the funny thing. A lot of people think, and as much as I would like to admit, I'm clever and did net because of tennis. The the real reason is when you create a website, you have to obviously buy it, go on and get a domain name and buy a domain name. And uh, somebody had already purchased bullsharksports.com.
Really?
So I could either pay $800 or something like that, $500 or $800, and have it be .net, or I could seek this person out and buy it from them for whatever they want to sell it for.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be, it's like my parents used to say when you go to a restaurant and it says market price, don't order it, please, because God knows how much it is.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you have to ask how much it costs, it's
You
not
can't afford it. Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's there. We had other names thrown out there like, my son was like, why don't you just do bssports.com? I'm like, well, I'm not going to have many signups for BS Sports,
for all the reasons, yeah.
So that's where the .net comes from.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't considered that someone would have already had Bull Shark Sports. Like,
I mean,
you
who
said it.
knows? Yeah.
I thought it'd be a clear, unique domain name.
Yeah.
But I found your article because you have got a blog, and I really appreciate this because it's one of those little things that we never get really credit for unless you're somebody like a Jorge Capistani that has thousands of these things and can share it and potentially monetize it. But you're more like me in this case where we've got our Tennis for Children articles, and it's to help the parents. It's an
Yeah.
additional offer, and it's a value add, so to speak. So we can say, hey, you know what? If it's raining, you need to go home and do something. You got to get your kids excited. Pull the cars out of the garage and do this thing. Or in your case, it's sharing your as I jokingly say, our thousands of years of experience as tennis coaches. And you're sharing in this case about jail, which I love it because it's very, how am I going to say it? It's USTA, and forgive me if this isn't your point of view. That's my question. See, even the dogs are telling me not to say this.
Yeah.
It's got a USTA toe the line. This is too long of a line. We want rally style lessons now to say, all right, now we're going to take these old games that we used to play and we're just kind of going to retire them because we're not allowed to use them anymore. And it's kind of like, how to describe, moving in a modern direction to say we don't teach this way anymore. And you do a good job of describing that argument. Can you give me the short recap for anybody listening to that article at bullsharksports.net? That's why I got to check out the articles at bullsharksports.net.
Yeah. Well, so yeah. And honestly, for me, going back, just take a step back, the blogs for me are just fun. I love to write. And for years and years and years running a club business, I was the main communicator. We had a director of communications, but mostly I wrote the content for all of those communications. She just made it look really pretty and sent out really nice, net newsletters and emails with pictures and videos and things. But I was the one actually writing the content because I had the tennis background. Right. And same for the website, same for emails, all those communications. I did, 90% of that stuff. And I really enjoyed doing it. So writing a blog for me was just a way to kind of keep myself, fresh, keep my writing fresh. It's something I enjoy, but also a subtle way to give people, like you said, help at home. So one thing we're big about is giving help at home. How can I play at home and practice at home? But then also give them a subtle way to give parents and players an idea of what my coaching philosophy is. So through reading these articles, you kind of get an idea what you're getting yourself into when you go on court with me. So it's there should be no surprises. But with jail, how it came about was I was actually listening to a podcast. I follow a guy named Rob Gray that I really like. I've read a couple of his books. He's fascinating. He's kind of new on the scene. He's a professor out of Arizona State University, and he wrote a book last year called How We Learn to Move. And it's all really cool stuff. It's the ecological approach to coaching, having kids play versus being in lines, giving kids a little bit more ownership, if you will, in their own games and play and things like that. So I was listening to his podcast, and long story short, and I listened to many of his podcasts, but in this particular podcast, he was describing, and I haven't thought about jail in forever. We don't do jail. No one, I was at Druid Hills, we didn't do jail, and I was at Dunwoody, we didn't do jail. My coaching philosophy is very much rally-based play. And so jail is just not a part of it. We find other games that we find value in. So I haven't thought about jail in a long time, but then he's describing pickleball, and his kid's taking a pickleball lesson. And if he had said my kids are taking a tennis lesson, they play jail, I probably wouldn't have cared, and it would have gone right over my head. I wouldn't have thought about it, and I wouldn't have written this article. But I went red for a minute because I was like, pickleball, seriously? Like the easiest rack. I mean, that's what you promote yourself on, pickleball. We're so popular because like the worst athlete ever could play pickleball, right? That's like I know they have like 18 different rating systems, and they did not listen to tennis's mistakes. Now they have 3 or 4 different pro tours. I got an email the other day for minor league pickleball. So pickleball is obviously the craze, and everybody's playing it, even kids. And so it's supposed to be so easy that anybody, like so easy a caveman can do it, right? Kind of thing. That's pickleball's basic elevator speech. And you're playing jail. Like literally, I'm like, how bad do you have to be to not be able to rally in pickleball that you have to stand in a line and have a coach feed you a ball that you hit over? So not really so much about the game in terms of tennis, but it was more like, man, if jail has found its way to pickleball, like what are we doing?
Is that picking on the coaches of pickleball as well? Because we've got a lot of tennis coaches transferring into pretending to be a pickleball coach. And usually the pickleball players can sniff that out. They can tell we're actually tennis guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And the worst thing you can do to a pickleball enthusiast, like the worst thing you could ever say is tennis or sorry, pickleball is like mini tennis. Like that really irritates them because they think pickleball is nothing like tennis. And there's a lot of differences, honestly. And I'm actually certified with the PPR to coach pickleball. So I haven't done a lot of pickleball coaching, but I have some knowledge in it and enough to know that there are some vast differences between the two, which we don't have to debate now because we won't talk about jail. But that's where it started. I was like, are you kidding me? You know? I mean, in the most rally-based racket sport, pickleball, now all of a sudden we've stuffed kids in lines and we're playing jail.
Yeah, and I picture jail in a pickleball court because we've got a pickleball court in our neighborhood here, and it's a single pickleball court with a fence around it, like it's its own little tiny tennis court. We actually use it for our 6 and under private lessons.
Oh,
So
that's
for
perfect.
private tennis lessons. Say, hey, here's a nice little. It's basically a similar size to the 36-foot 8 and under court. But then I picture trying to get a line of 6 or 7 kids on this little court with a fence right behind it, and it really just doesn't lend to that. But my guess is there was a lot more space. How many kids are you talking playing this pickleball jail game that you
I don't know.
saw?
I mean, I think 6 maybe. I mean,
Okay,
it was on a podcast. He was describing it. I didn't see the video.
gotcha.
But he went into talking about how, I mean, the whole podcast was about how the kids he evidently did a warm up, like sort of our a dink warm up. So our tennis version of a mini tennis warm up, our pickleball version of a mini tennis warm up. They kind of drifted back and were sort of rallying and serving from the baseline and doing some kind of cooperative rally drills. And then, Rob did make note that he thought their backhands were pretty weak, just his observation. And maybe the coach could have steered their lesson that way, like working on their backhands or something. But no, I'm sorry. Their serves weren't that good. That's what it was. But the coach wanted to work on their backhands. So that was one thing he thought maybe the coach could have, which I do oftentimes. I always call it, going off script. When I walk on the court, I always used in Druid Hills, when we walked on the court, and I even to this day, I have about 3 or 4 quote lesson plan templates in my, either on paper or in my head because if whatever happens in warm up, I might go, oh man, we really need to take a step back and work on this today or whatever it may be. So that was the case with them. He felt like they could work on serving, but they were pretty much sound like doing a cooperative style rally with their drills and stuff, or maybe some things that are, more modern age to tennis where one kid's, tossing the ball and the other kid's hitting the backhand back over and the kid's catching it and kind of repeating that process, which is similar to what we do in red ball or orange ball tennis. And then it was like, now they're in a position to play like a real match. And then we go this way, right? Like, why didn't we take the lesson to the match play? Instead, we've got to play like this fun game. And so sometimes for me, it was often like, it's not so much the game itself. It's like the intent, right? Like we feel like if let's do a fun little game for the kids. Like, why does fun
Why haven't you been doing
and
fun the whole time?
purposeful need to be separate? Like, why can't the two work together?
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think through. So as you say, because the USTA has, and I pick on the USTA a little bit because it's very different. What the USTA pictures as a tennis lesson is very different from what I do on a daily basis with tennis for children. And the push now is everything should be rally based. So you take away the lines. If you've got 6 kids, you should have 3 kids hitting with 3 other kids, and it's always rallying. And you've spent some time training other coaches in these systems. Can you catch me up on why that's better than having kids stand in a line?
Yeah. So it's not just, yeah, right. There's a lot of, I mean, we could go so many different ways in this. So I'll pick engagement and touches on the ball as one. Okay. So, and kids in lines are, it's very difficult. It's very coach centered, right? Because the coach is constantly, what does the coach usually do when the kids are in lines? He's usually barking at the kids that aren't hitting the ball to get them to pay attention, focus, move up, rotate, all those things that are about managing. So it becomes more of a management of the lesson, less about the kids actually getting touches on the ball and getting reps and actually hitting the ball. So if you can take those 6 kids and spread them out and have them rally with each other, then that takes care of that problem. They're all occupied. They all have their own space. And the other thing is like, the kids, you've got, well, before I'll say that, I'll say this. It's not also about like, okay, we're just going to roll the balls out and have them rally and they're going to magically get better. Okay. There's a lot of things that go into it. And you follow on it, which USTA actually follows this in their new level 1 coaching certification. USPTA and PTR follow this. PTR has for years had it. It's called the hourglass method, which is an open format. The USPTA now has the same thing. They call it the I, because I guess the hourglass is trademarked by the PTR. I don't know, but it's the same concept. It's open, closed, open. So you can have, so open is your warm up, right? The kids are just doing mini tennis for an example. Okay. Or maybe they're just tossing balls and bounce and catch, that's an open skill environment. And then you go to skill development. So you close it down. You're going to work on something really specific. And then at the end, you're going to open it back up and do something more games based, something that looks more like a real tennis match. Okay. So you open it up, you basically open, see what the kids can do, close, pick a skill they need to focus on to make them better, focus on that in skill development or the closed portion of your lesson. And then you open it back up to see if whatever you taught them in skill stuck. Okay. And then it becomes a question of, can the kids do this or does the coach need to feed the ball, right? If my kid is a red ball kid and we're just trying for him to get the ball over, then maybe his friend, his 7-year-old friend, can just toss him the ball and he can try to tap it over where his friend can catch it. And we do a lot of stuff like that, so it is rally based, but that's more of a closed skill, right? You're tossing to Johnny's forehand. He's trying to tap it back over the net. You catch it if you can, or go chase it because it just went over your head. And then you toss it back to him. And so rather than waiting in a line for your opportunity for coach to feed you the ball, we just let the players feed the ball to each other.
And you've seen success in this? Because I've tried this with a group of 5-year-olds and it's a nightmare.
Okay. So yeah, and I get that all the time. My kids can't do this. Okay. 2 things. And if you listen to any coach, listen to Rob, there's another great coach that I follow, John O'Sullivan. He's a soccer coach. He has a thing called Changing the Game Project. His biggest thing is let it be ugly. Like, the problem with us as tennis coaches is that we want to, and this is my fundamental problem with jail. And a lot of people think I'm anti-feed. I'm anti-coach feed. I'm not anti-coach feed. I just want to know the purpose behind it. Right. So, and there are times where I do feed. Like, I'll give you a quick example. When kids go to orange ball, right? One of the things orange ball, or even worse when it's green or yellow ball on the big court, on the full court. One of the things that they have challenges with is like the high moon ball, right? High moon ball. Like, do I take it on the rise? Do I like back 20 feet up and let it bounce, let it drop? What do I do? Now, that's a ball that you need a lot of practice at to learn how to track and how to play back into the court, right? So a kid may not be able to feed that ball. So that might be an opportunity where I, as the coach, and I actually do this, where I would either hand feed it, I might just have them on the baseline, I might just toss it with my hand, or I might get on the other side of the net and feed with my racket. And so I can simulate that high, deep ball that they need to track. And usually that's a small group, usually that's 6 or less kids. I wouldn't have 12 kids in a line. Hitting, and that's some of the issues that I see as I look around. You got 12 kids on one court that are 5 years old and they're hitting 2 forehands across. And then, that's a lot of time between shots, between opportunities. But basically,
I don't know a lot of 5-year-olds that can hit 2 forehands across, much less.
Sorry, they swing and they miss.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Which, let's get back to that, because I got something else that I found very interestingly once I've kind of gotten more the neighborhood world about balls and ball management.
Okay.
But my so where were we talking about? I got on a tangent about feeding. Oh, people think I'm anti-feed. I'm not anti-feed. I just want what the purpose is behind it. And if the kid can feed the ball, then I can spread the kids out and have them getting reps and touches on the ball much better than them waiting in a line, where we know, they're going to become disinterested and distracted and those sorts of things. So yes. So to your point, you got a 5-year-old that can't do that. Okay.
I've got seven 5-year-olds that can't do that. Well, call it 6, because we're really not going to have more than 6 5-year-olds.
So So basically, my fundamental philosophy with tennis, teaching tennis to kids, is that tennis is nothing more than playing catch with using tennis rackets. And that's exactly what we say to kids. We spend a lot of time playing catch. It's tossing the ball, maybe tossing the ball over the net. Now, I've found, I will say, that USTA, they're one of the USTA staple activities, net generation staple activities, is make a move where the kid's on a line and one of the other kids tossing the ball to the left and right, and the kid has to run and catch it off one bounce. So I personally have found that the net works really good as like a barometer of how the kid should toss the ball. Because if you put two kids, let's say 5 feet from each other, Shaun, and you go, okay, Shaun, I want you to toss the ball to Ben. Ben, I want you to let it bounce and then catch it. Your 5-year-old is going to just chuck that ball 8 feet behind because he just has no reference point, right? I don't know where. Now, you could do little things like you could put little donuts out or rings or something and say, hey, Billy, I want you to try to toss it and land on the ring. And John, I want you to try to catch it. You can do stuff like that. I've just found the net, like tossing balls over the net. The net just works really well. It separates the kids, right? So this is your side, this is my side, right? It usually works pretty well for tossing catching. Now, if they're not skilled enough to toss and catch a red tennis ball off the bounce, use a soccer ball. Use a kickball. We use a kickball a lot. Okay, I have a whole bag of kickballs I keep, and just bring the kickball. Kickball's super huge. Now the kids are usually hugging it. That's kind of the progression. Like we move from hugging the ball to catching the ball because that's usually what they'll do is they'll just hug it like this, and that's fine. At least they're stopping it, right? And we kind of progress from there. Like another thing you can do with, and I wrote an article about this as well, is about rolling rallies. If you got 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, don't forget your rolling rallies. You can put the ball on the ground because a lot of things that these kids are having trouble with is following the trajectory. The ball goes up over the net, it bounces, it comes up again. That's a lot for a 5-year-old to try to track. So maybe just keep the ball on the ground and have them roll the ball back and forth to each other. As long as they're standing sideways to the ball with the edge of the racket on the ground and they're pushing the ball along the ground with the edge, not the tip of the racket, like I see a lot of coaches let kids do, but with the edge of the racket. So it looks sort of like a forehand or backhand, with the racket kind of parallel to the ground. It works really well. They roll it to one kid. They do like we call a little mouse trap where the kid turns the racket face down and kind of traps it over the ball to stop it. And then and that gets them with one thing that we're big on as well is racket skills, like how to handle the racket, and get some ability to trap the ball. They have to turn the racket then and push it back to their teammate. And we do rolling rallies. I mean, I have 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and we'll do like tunnels. We'll make like tunnels with either cones or throwdown lines that keep the ball in the tunnel, We'll do like triangles where they're working on moving the ball to a different direction, right? So all the same stuff that you can do in triangles is like 2-on-1s. So you can do 2-on-1s with a 5-year-old. They're just rolling the ball to each other versus, doing 2-on-1s with 3 tournament players that are baseline to baseline hitting it, right? So a lot of the same things we do with advanced kids, we can do with young beginners. We just have to scale it. And that's a word you'll hear a lot in the coaching world in lots of sports is scaling, scale the activity. And that was the idea behind Quick Start in the first place. It was just to scale down to give kids a better opportunity to actually play the game of tennis.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to my wife about it a couple weeks ago. I went and showed her that first, it was Andre Agassi and Steffi Graf did that commercial with they're reading the book to the kids and they had the big scary chord and at the end
Yeah, I remember that.
little Johnny quit and went and played soccer.
Yeah. That was funny.
It got to me. Like it reminded me. I think at the time I was a little bit anti changing the things because I grew up with a full size racket and golly darn it, like the kids should be able to now, Kids are too soft these days was kind of my thought at the time. And then that came out and I went, no, this actually is a lot better. And I'm full on board with the smaller rackets and the red, orange, and green balls. I love it. We're trying to figure out here. I want to go back and I'm going to transition using something you were talking about the tossing the ball up to cover that moon ball, right?
Okay.
We've got kids that can barely hit a ball if we hand drop it for them. We do a lot of hand feed at Tennis for Children specifically. And so we'll do a forehand and a backhand, getting them to understand one hand on one side, two hands on the other. And we'll do a drop feed right in front of the kids. And that's kind of the staple as to where we start. They can't figure that part out. We then switch to tossing the ball from across the net, and they've got zero chance. It just doesn't work. And granted, these are full-on beginners. A lot of these kids are fairly uncoordinated.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't as though we have the more coordinated 5-year-olds in a group. We end up with the less coordinated. And to get them to just hit a ball there, one side or the other, we end up doing that hand feed. They're not worried about whether or not the ball is going too high. It is just that simple tracking the ball. So you talk about your kids being baseball, being a lot of baseball with your son and being involved in that. That's just going out in the yard and playing catch. And that's as much like you said, there's a lot of catch that we play. Tennis is catch with a tennis racket. Go home and play catch with your kids. Go home and have the kids throw to each other. We did something the other day where they had to just let the ball bounce, catch it, and then throw it over the net. And they loved it. It was just different enough, and they could see that transition of letting the ball bounce and then going to get it. But I would say half of them couldn't catch the ball, starting from a dot, split step, pivot, to the right, go try to catch the ball, one hand, two hand, didn't matter, they couldn't do it. So we toss the ball up really high, that's fine, but I'll combine it with jail. And one of the fun things we will do is we play a game called Skyrocket Jail. So we actually use jail, and this I'll kind of move into my pros versus the cons of how we use jail and why, because you did say you'd like to see a purpose. Like, why are you playing this pointless game? So we try to use it with a point. So one of the games we play, we call Skyrocket Jail, and we'll hit the ball way up in the air. And whether they're using a racket or they're just catching the ball, whichever version, whichever age they are, we hit the ball way up in the air. They've got to let it bounce, and then they've got to hit the ball over the net. So we work on a skill-specific instance within the game of jail. Then they have to run over because, remember, these kids are not going home and playing catch. This is the only time they get a chance.
Yeah, this is their hour a week off the iPad. Yeah, no,
exactly.
I get it.
Exactly. And those are the kids that we see a lot. So when I read the let's retire the game jail article on your blog, I just got all excited because I'm thinking I wonder if I can defend the merits and say, well, here's how we use it, but then not from a I need to be right, jail is still useful point of view, but to go to someone like you who is a coach trainer and I am a coach to say, okay, Shaun, I see how you're doing this. I'd love to see this, or yeah, maybe that's got some merit.
But so let's back up a second. Let me explain your game. So Skyrocket Jail. So the coach is feeding the ball.
Yep.
So the coach just tosses the ball. He tosses it super high in the air.
Yep.
And then the kid has to track that high ball, let it bounce.
Yep.
And then try to hit it back over.
Either try to hit it back over or catch it, depending on the age range and the ability.
So if they're not that good, they don't have a racket, and they're just catching it.
Yep.
So what if they don't catch it?
If they don't catch it, they still have to go get it. So they still have to go through the process of picking it up. Then they're going to do their own self-feed forehand.
Okay.
And then they go to jail. So they still have to go through the process of successfully somehow getting the ball over the net, which is the original point there. And remember, these are we call them ultimate beginners. So, and they, however long it takes, and here's part of the problem of the line. Sometimes it takes too long, and eventually you have to say, all right, time, get out. You missed it.
Yeah. So what are the other kids doing while this is going on? My first question.
What are the other kids doing? They're watching, pointing, and laughing.
Okay.
Or talking to each other or sword fighting.
So now you've got a kid. So the other point is, so that kid has to go to, he has to, and this is, I know what I'm about to say. I'm going down, I know I'm about to throw some gasoline on the fire here. And Coach, you just talked about the kids are too soft nowadays. They need to get tough and all this kind of stuff. But because I've been a huge advocate for equal opportunity development forever. And what that means is that we make sure that every kid gets the same number of touches on the ball as as everyone else, right? And this was actually a USPTA thing way back in the day, like way back in the 90s. USPTA instructors, clinicians, testers, they call them testers. We don't call them testers anymore, we call them coach developers. But the USP testers, we're talking about everyone gets the same number of feeds, not the same number of hits. So like, because what would happen with a coach, right, is yeah, you feed the ball, Billy swings him. Oh, come on, let's go again, let's go again, let's go again. Like, so he ends up getting like 30 feeds until he finally makes one over.
Right.
And poor, poor Sally over there, she comes up, she hits it the first time over, and she's on her way. She only got one feed, right? Yeah. So she only got one swing, otherwise she hit it over, while as little Billy got 30. But my point is, so what are the other kids doing? And then, yeah, so equal opportunity. And then that kid that misses, right, he has to go to jail. Yep. Okay. And I've seen all different versions. Like I've we had coaches play games called Ghost in the Graveyard, which was the same thing, right? You hit the ball.
Doghouse.
Yeah, you hit the ball. If you miss it, you run around. Coach hits the ball at you for free. So if ball hits, then the coach whacks like 10 balls, which the kids have to go pick up, by the way, eventually.
Yep.
And then if you get tagged with that ball, if the ball hits you, now you're frozen. And then the next person in line, if they miss, they have to run and try to tag you. And I get it. It's kind of it's whatever. It's fun for the kids, whatever. But the other thing is the kid, and this is where I'll be back to equal opportunity development. The kid who swung and missed doesn't need to go to jail or timeout or wherever. He needs to get more reps on the ball, whether that's from a coach or whether that's from another kid or whether that's him up against, like we started a thing called fence rallies, where we literally spread the kids out. And we got the same kids you're talking about. We spread the kids out along the fence line and have them drop and feed the ball. And the ball is literally sometimes 6 inches off the ground. That's as high as they're just making contact. All right. And they're just literally just tapping the ball up against the fence, and they're having their own little fence rally. We take hula hoops out and rings. I take rings and I hook them to the fence. All right. I've been doing this recently with a group I've had this winter at Linmore Woods, doing it every Wednesday. And it's a group of 5 to 8 year olds. And they have some of them have trouble making contact off of a ball that's bounced. Now the rolling rallies again have been a good recipe for them, for that's pretty easy. But they're getting to the point where they need to start letting the ball bounce and trying to hit it. So they just do self feed. So we do a couple of different things. I'll hook a ring, nice ring or hula hoop to the fence. Everybody's got. I bring enough rings for every kid. Everybody's got their own space. Everybody's got their own ring, and they practice drop feed and land it in the ring. If they land it, if they drop feed and hit it and the ball goes in the ring or touches the ring, then they get to back up a step and try it again if they want to. Now, some kids don't want to. They don't want to. They just want to keep banging it out. Hey, I got 10 in a row. That's good for you. So every kid's a little different. And then what I have done is every week I've slowly but surely raised the ring height. Right. So it's just a little more. They don't really notice it, but it's a little bit higher every single week. And they're all spread out. They're all kind of, now, the only thing I don't like about that is I do think kids come to tennis in all sports for socialization. So I think sometimes while it does give them more reps because they're doing their own thing, and the fence contains the ball, right? You just bounce, feed the ball, it goes in the ring or doesn't go in the ring. It's still hitting the fence and basically rolling back to the kid. So the ball management's pretty good. They're, the ball comes back to them. They get a lot of touches on the ball, and these kids will bounce and hit in a 5-7 minute segment. They might bounce and hit 25, 30 times. So they're getting a lot of touches on the ball, but it does break the socialization down a little bit because they're kind of off on their own, doing their own thing. It's the same when I have kids that can't toss the ball back to each other. And we talk a lot about independent and dependent skills. So like an independent skill is like you're just doing something by yourself, right? Like it doesn't really matter. Like throwing a ball against the wall is kind of an independent skill. I mean, the wall's not doing anything. It's just bouncing the ball back or tossing the ball up in the air and letting it bounce and seeing if you can catch the ball that you toss. That's an independent skill. And we talk to the kids about this. Dependent skills are tougher because the dependent skill depends on the level of your partner, right? So if your partner sucks, it's not going to be a very fun drill, right? So there's that aspect too. So if they're all kind of bad and can't be cooperative, then we will have them do independent skills to try to get more reps. And I'll literally have kids where same thing. I'll take the ring, I'll put it down on the ground. I'll say, okay, stand outside your ring, toss the ball up in the air above your head, and see if you can make it land down on the ring. You'll be amazed at how bad they are at it.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah. We
and
got
but it
a game for the little ones where we call it bonk. You got to throw the ball up and let it bounce on your head, and they can't do it.
yeah, but that's a great game because it's learning to track the ball, having awareness, right? Self-awareness. And so,
Well, the spatial awareness is what they're working on. So I'm going to take that kid that swings and misses, and I don't know that he needs another swing and miss. I think he needs to put the racket down and go play catch, which is what jail allows him to do on the other end. Is he's got to go track a ball. If you can't catch it, how do you expect to hit it with a stick?
well, totally. Yeah.
So I think that's one of the merits that I would say with that spatial awareness is, yeah, you got to, if you're a coach playing jail, you got to move it because you've got to realize there's a kid in line. And how long do you have? I remember, what was it? It was one of those testers, my USPTA testing back in early 2000s. And it was talking about how long does someone stand in line? Even if you just got 4 people in line, you can't just toss 20 balls to one person while the other people, because then you got 20 seconds, you got somebody in line for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things in your work day, that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but while you're standing in line waiting to hit a tennis ball, you need to be in line less than 60 seconds is kind of my threshold. So if you've got 3 kids, you got to move them through within 60 seconds. And maybe that's a USTA, maybe that's too big of a number, too little of a number. That's just my personal threshold of if I've got 12 kids in a line playing jail because it's fun and we've only got 4 minutes left and I'm going to be loud and screaming and balls going everywhere and they're going to be tracking balls and bumping into each other and having fun. Not that we weren't having fun before, by the way. We were always playing games and having fun before. But we have this little extra loud, kind of big, everybody comes together social game. Can I get through that line with 12 kids coming off from 2 courts? We're spread out. We got 3 coaches. We got 12 kids. And we're all spread. We got coaches spread out, handling things, handling the line. I got to get through 12 kids in 60 seconds. So there's a threshold that I say, okay, if I'm going to play jail, and Ben Hesley's going to allow me to do this, he's going to say, Shaun, okay, here's why I'm going to let you keep doing this and not give you any more grief about it. Because I'm, number one, I've got a purpose. 2, these kids need more catch than they need swings at some argument. Like I can make the argument they need to go catch a ball and play catch more than they need to figure out how to hit it with a stick. And I need to be able to get through that line in 60 seconds. Is that a reasonable, I can justify the use of that game in that situation?
So the other thing to think about is your real estate, right?
Yep.
And as working at a private club for as long as I did and having a situation where I'll often have more courts than we have. We often have more people than we have courts, right? We've got court demand is at became at an all-time high. And so you can't think of this as a tennis court. Think of it as a piece of real estate. And how much space do these kids really need? Do they need a full-on court? Now, when you're playing this jail game, are you playing like with a red ball, or are you like they over the full-size net and
it's orange balls for 8 and under groups and yellow, very old yellow balls for the 12 and under.
So they're over a real net.
Yep. Full size court. And
so a lot of space they can run around and all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay. So, is that the best use of that space? If the kids are at a point where they can't even hit the ball over.
Oh yeah. Half of them come up and either swing and miss or they hit the ball sideways. Oh no. And they go running around and drop their racket and come in. And basically I'm managing 6 kids. And again, we've just spent the first 55 minutes with 3 coaches on 2 courts or 3 coaches on 3 courts, everybody spread out, working on going through your whole, the whole lesson plan is done. It's 5:55. I've got my last 5 minutes and we're going to bring everybody together. And this is an old school idea. And that's why when I saw your article, I thought, okay, do I need to consider retiring this? Because is it just something I've always known? And it's so easy as a coach to just go full on. This is the last of my energy for the day. and I'm
Yeah.
going to be yelling and screaming and having fun and throwing freebies up in the air and letting the kids track the ball, because the kids that we work with can hardly catch a ball. They can hardly step, on a forehand, right foot, left foot,
But
swing.
does that really matter? Like, I mean, you
No,
know,
in this case, they
like,
want that social. Everybody comes together, and it's really entertaining because I'm watching the parents, which is one of our litmus tests for this kind of structure. Is if I can pay attention to a parent that's sitting there watching, judging me as to how good of a lesson I'm
oh,
running.
good word. Yeah.
We're getting judged by that parent
Yeah.
for the full hour, if not before that and after, because of how we greet them and how we send them home. So we're getting judged that full time. And I've got maybe half the parents there of these 12 kids. And like I said, we've got 3 coaches. We're fully staffed. Our ratios are good, but we bring
But so
everybody
here's
together.
my thing, Shaun. If you,
Yeah.
so, because you want to read another one of my articles, I wrote one back in 2000, I think it was 12, way back in the day, man, almost 11 years ago, called Let Something that it was in the Southern Standard, it was a USPTA Southern magazine. And it was entitled Let the Players Feed. And I gave the top 10 reasons why the players should feed, not the coaches. And because I had this same thing happen to me, I started at Druid Hills, and I had an argument one day with a fellow pro on our staff. And he didn't like the way I was doing. He didn't like I was letting the kids feed, let the players feed. Heck, we even took this into the adults. I'd have adult alpha teams, and the ladies would be feeding to each other, and I would walk around the court and I would coach everybody up close, right? And give everybody, we call it pigs, became known as pigs, privates in a group setting. And if you're moving around the court, you can give a lot of pigs because you can give personal attention to people from up close where they're less embarrassed. You can be a little more critique. I mean, nobody likes to be yelled at from across the court. Hey, man, get your racket back. He just told the whole club that his forehand sucks, So I and others, we kind of developed this approach, and one of the pros on our staff didn't like it. And so we had this conversation, and I said to him, he said, the members pay me to feed balls. And I said, no, the members, and I said, well, they're paying too much. And he kind of looked at me, and I said, no, they pay you to coach them. The reason you can charge
rental cost. Like that's,
yeah. And I'm not saying if you feed, you're not coaching. I'm not saying that.
Sure.
But in his mind, he had to coach, he had to feed. He had to feed. He had to be in control. He was, as you put it, being judged. What are you doing? Are you working? Like, are you? And I've had people say that to me. Are you working? You're just walking around. Like, who cares? If your kid's happy and getting better at tennis, why do you care that I'm not over there by the basket feeding the ball?
They want to see you earning that money.
They want to see you, yeah.
Hugging the racket, standing in the corner, just watching.
Yeah, and so a lot of the time, a lot of the problems I've had trying to coach, and it's even worse now. It's worse today than it's ever been. And the reason is because we got this thing right here. We got this iPhone or Android, whatever it is, device you use. You got one in your pocket, right? To the point where years ago at Druid Hills, we had a situation where I used to have radios for all the staff, pro shop staff, pros on the courts had radio, radios, two-way radios. Maintenance staff definitely have them. So we could communicate with each other around the facility. Hey, somebody come down to help. We got, somebody needs to come out here and sweep court 7, need some help lining court 5, whatever it is, water cooler's empty on court 12, whatever the case may be, right? Just so we could communicate. Okay. Hey, Mr. Smith's coming down. He wants to use the ball machine. Can somebody put it out? So, but you know what happened? Staff never had the radio on, or their radio was always dead. I forgot to charge it last night. I forgot my radio. Okay. So guess what? There's this awesome app called Zello. Okay. On your phone. So we started using it because I can tell you one thing, you may forget your radio, but you ain't going to forget your cell phone. Okay. Because there's way too much important information on that cell phone for you to forget. So we said, hey, let's get a radio app on the phone. You got no excuse now for not answering my messages. So it worked. But the problem is we have our phones and the pros use their phone. And so what I have found, I've seen a pro feed the ball and look at his phone at the same time.
Oh, the guy, picking up balls and he's making phone.
Yeah. So it's funny. I had another short story. I had a member that he had just joined the club. This was few years ago, just joined Druid Hills. takes his first men's clinic from us, and we do a drill, whatever, and then we're all picking up balls. And he's like, "Wow, you guys!" And he said, "You know, I'm not gonna tell you what public facility he came from, but he said, "Wow, you guys aren't on your cell phones while we're picking up balls. You're actually picking up balls with us." And I'm like, "Yeah, it goes faster, man. If I pick up too, like
Setting up for the
we can
next
get back to hitting faster. You know, I'm just, what am I supposed to do?
It's a better product. It's a quality
Yeah." He's
product.
like, "You're not standing over there on your phone, you know, calling your next lesson while we're you know." But so I do think sometimes pros have to feel that busy, right? So the point is they have to feel like they're working. And the easiest way to feel like you're working is to actually just start feeding the balls, right? So I'm working, I'm feeding. But I don't know if that's always the best way, and especially with kids that don't need that much space. So my argument would be, rather than playing jail with this space, maybe get why don't you play, like, get a, and they can't rally, they can barely hit the ball, okay? Like, get a kickball out and play chuck and chase, where they're basically playing either a team singles or a champs and challengers, you know, old school king of the court type format, where instead of like rallying, because they can't do that, they're actually taking the kickball and they're tossing it over the net and letting it bounce and catch it. If you don't catch it, you lose the point, okay? Or if you toss it in the net, lose a point. Or if you toss it out of bounds, you lose a point. So they're getting some athletic skills, and they're learning literally the ins and outs of how to play the game of tennis. So you're getting a lot more bang for your buck there, in my opinion, than putting him in a line. And yeah, while it's fun and it's entertaining, and the parents they get all jacked up because there's a lot of noise going on during a game
I
like
can
that.
take over a whole club by getting loud.
And so it's more, you know, they're getting more experience in playing the game and how tennis actually works, you know. And I know coaches who aren't really big on red and orange balls. They're old school, and but they like kids playing regular balls, whatever. But they at least understand that it takes somewhat of athleticism to play this game of tennis. And so they'll do just that. They'll actually have kids throwing, like literally taking the tennis ball and throwing it over the net, catch it, throw it back, and they have to move each other and all that kind of stuff. And so they're kind of learning some strategy behind, you know, that's similar to how it would be if you were actually have the rackets and playing a real tennis match.
Yeah, and we've had trouble convincing parents is the wrong word, but we get negative feedback more often when it doesn't look like tennis. So
Yeah.
these are also, so remember, as we're doing it, and I'm just coming from my personal, I'm trying to solve my own problem here, which is, if I can solve this one problem and you and I can have this conversation, maybe we can help others just with the conversation. But solve my own problem, which is, we've got a lot beginner kids come with beginner parents.
Yeah.
That's sometimes just as hard to say, okay, Mr. Smith, how do I explain this to you without going full on condescending, Coach Shaun?
Hey, can we pause that for a second? Can I get like a 30-second break?
Absolutely.
Edit this out. All right. This is good stuff. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh. All right, I'm back, Shaun, whenever you're ready. Gonna reload the coffee for this one, huh?
Exactly.
All right, man. Nature calls, right?
Yep.
So you're talking about the parents and like newbie parents, and that's interesting. I love to hear about that because I've had, I'm assuming the exact opposite sort of with newbie parents. I mean, I got parents who they don't know what red ball, orange balls are. I mean, they learn them from hearing the kids talk about them. They don't know what small courts are. The USTA, they don't know what that is. They just know that there's a tennis class offered their neighborhood. They sign their kid up and they want them to be happy, healthy, and active. And anything I do during that hour, they're totally cool with. I've never had a parent say anything to me about what is it, what now in my new role. Never had a parent question anything I'm doing on court. So what's been your different experience?
We get two different parents that are problem parents, so to speak. And I don't want to say problem parents. Like one of the things I pride myself on is being able to explain to a beginner parent, here's how the billing works, here's what to expect. This is social, this is fun, this is all beginning tennis, remind you. So it's there. We don't have anything intermediate. Once they get to intermediate, we send them to somebody else. Like we only do beginner, and it's that onboarding tennis process. It's look, this is going to look like fun, especially with the 6 and under. A lot of this isn't going to look like tennis. Our young coaches that we target that's the wrong word. Our young coaches that we train, I said it didn't look like what you expected, did it? Because there's no tennis, there's no back and forth. This is bounce catch level stuff. But with the parents explaining to them and say, hey, look, this is simple stuff. And they want to question, they say, well, we want it to look like tennis. I'm like, so do I. Give me a year because you're only giving me your kid for 1 day a week for an hour. I know it's expensive. So I'm not saying you need to start spending $1,000 a month instead of $100 a month, but you're on a slow track. And if you want to do more at home. There's at-home videos that we've got on websites. You know, Ben Hesley's got some great information on his site. So there's information out there for these parents, but they don't know how it works. So they end up going back and forth to different coaches and different clubs, and they get all these experiences, and they say, okay, this was a good experience, this was a bad experience. And then they have to find the coach that works for them. Do they want somebody who's just going to go through a lot of balls? They want somebody who's got short lines and small ratios, coach to student. So we've got that coach that's questioning how it should work, not from an unknowledgeable point of view of saying, what am I looking at? I don't even know if this is good or bad, and we have to explain it to them. Okay. The other one is the YouTube parent who's on YouTube coming to me, arguing with me about what I'm teaching to the kids. So he goes on YouTube and he says, but Coach Shaun, this guy says they need to point his toe this way, or the elbow needs to be here. And we have that kind of Richard Williams kind of parent that's going to argue with the coach about the technique, less honestly questioning the system itself. So we really have those two parents that we manage. Everybody else just says, Coach Shaun, thank you so much. My kid loves it.
Now, how many of these parents are there?
What is there a percentage? I would say 50% of them are first time, no idea what they're doing parents, and always questioning why we're doing what we're doing. Not always in an aggressive way. They're not questioning because they don't like it. They're questioning simply because they want to understand. So we're often defending ourselves. We're often explaining why and how we do things. And I would say maybe 10% are the parents that are questioning what we're teaching and why, because they think they know something because they watched a YouTube video. Not that many are the YouTube parent, because eventually they're easy to explain. This is great. We're giving you one way to do it. This is a beginner system. This is a simple start here, finish here kind of point of view. By the time this is a 4-year-old parent questioning what their 4-year-old needs to do. It doesn't matter right now. My job is to make sure they like it. If they don't like it, it doesn't matter what grip they use.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's kind of a thing of, are you teaching tennis or are you teaching athleticism through tennis?
Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes this would happen uh, at the club a lot, where you'd have a parent who they sign their 4 or 5 year old up for tennis, right? And we in our tennis class was literally called Learning to Rally. And it was like, a lot of this is not going to look like tennis, because hence the name of the class, it's Learning to Rally, right? We're trying to teach them how to get somewhat of a rally going. But they sign up for tennis, they got their tennis racket, and they want to use that racket, right? And so they come in and you start doing things like, tossing and catching balls, and playing tag, and maybe some relay races, and running through rope light, whatever it is that you want to do in terms of building their athleticism. They're like, well, wait a second, we're supposed to be hitting tennis balls. I want them to learn forehands and backhands and serves,
You kids can hardly walk, and
Yeah.
you want them to hit a topspin forehand. I mean, this is rubbing your head and patting your belly. There is no walking and chewing gum at the same time. They need to split step, pivot, turn sideways, and once they do that, their brain's cooked. They just wait, hang on, split step.
Yeah,
pivot,
like
what?
that's even too much. I mean, I can spend 6 months trying to get a kid to turn sideways. Just forget split step, pivot. Just get your body and that's the thing too, is like, and this is what the rally-based approach will do for coaches and do for players. Self-organization. Get the kids to self-organize. Good example is 2 years ago when I was doing toss, and I would do, and we had a coach that was a pretty good coach that worked with us for a while. But he was, I mean, it almost sounded like the military when he was doing ball toss and catch drills with 8-year-olds on a red ball court. He'd be like, right hand, left foot, step, toss, catch, like that kind of guy. And you're like, dude, like, I mean, and it was like very militaristic, right? Like, yeah, we're kind of doing the play-based approach, but like it's like a little bit too organized, right? Like, I mean, and I've had kids, if I just say, hey,
Kindergarten cop.
yeah, basically. And it's like, left foot, use your left foot. And so you get some kids who are like, and I've been watching this lately, and as I watch kids more, I really start to just change my tune a little bit and think about from their side of things. Like, so like a ball, like they toss the ball, right? If they're really close together, they're not going to move their feet. They're just going to like toss it. So what you have to do is, rather than telling them to step because telling them to step forward with their left foot and toss with their right hand doesn't mean anything to them until they actually have to use more body parts than the arm to move the ball forward. So you back them up, right? So let's make the space farther away. So they have to do the first thing is going to take like a huge, backswing and, throw it God knows where. Okay. And you go, oh no, hey, if you actually move your body forward, like just take a step forward. Don't tell them what foot. And I've had more kids that'll step, like, let's say they're toss with their right hand. They'll step with their right foot. And first you go, no, your left foot. It's supposed to be opposite, right? Opposite foot, opposite hand, And then you start watching, you're like, well, he's having pretty good success stepping with his right foot and tossing, and
one thing at a time. Take the success.
And let's take this conversation back to pickleball. The reason I'm able to be okay with that is in pickleball, I learned that you don't cross over so much. There's a lot of like side movement, lateral movement in pickleball, and you actually will hit a lot of open stance shots where you're kind of like, let's say I'm left-handed, but let's just say I'm right-handed. If I'm hitting a righty forehand, I might like lean on my right leg to get me some, and you'll kind of move your hip forward, right, as your arm goes. And we're on a podcast, you can't really see what I'm doing, but as I'm kind of like, I'll use my like same side hip, my dominant hip. So my right hand is hitting the ball, but my right hip is kind of helping me push the ball forward. Like that's a pickleball move. Like if you just let a kid go, sometimes they'll naturally do something. Like I'll give you an example. Like one thing we do a lot is called line crosses, where I'll put the kids on the outside of the alley, and it's just for them to practice lateral movement. I'll say, hey, and we're going to go for 15 seconds, and let's see how many you got to cross from the double sideline. You have to cross, both feet have to cross the single sideline for it to start, okay, or for it to count rather, and then go back over to where you go the other way, so you finish across the the double sidelines. You're moving
like
double
an
sideline.
like shuffling across the doubles alley.
Okay, good thing you said shuffle, because as the coach, I used to say shuffle, right? So shuffle your feet across the line and shuffle your feet across back the line. So they would all do that, right? Now, if you take a kid who's never done it before and you just say, hey, Billy, I want you to cross the line, just get your body across the single sideline, then back across the double sideline. And we're going to see many times you can do that in 15 seconds. Most of the kids will actually use a crossover step. They're like, because they're like in their mind, they're like, it's a lot more efficient, right? Less energy wasted. I can cover more ground if I just take my right foot and cross over my left foot. Then I'm almost across the alley, right? And I may have to do like a little side shuffle to get across. Okay. So then they're starting to cross, which is what you see a lot in when people actually play, right? When they actually go hit a forehand and recover, they use more of a crossover step, right? To get back in position rather than just like side shuffling across, right? And we talk about that with some of our older, more advanced players, but even the young kids, if you just let them go, they'll naturally figure out. And when I say this, I'm not saying that you have to like, the term is set it and forget it, right? Like just do this and it'll be magical and you'll be the most unbelievable athlete. Like, no, there's some coaching and some guidance that goes with this. But if you're willing to just step back a little bit as a coach and let the kids go a little bit, you'll find that they can self-organize themselves pretty well and figure out what exactly it is that they're supposed to be doing. So we often will spend time. And I just wrote an article about this, not to toot my own horn, but my blog this week was about the two bounce, because I've changed my tune on two bounces. I used to be, do not ever let that ball bounce twice on my court, because that shows lack of effort. But I realized you probably need that second bounce because you had no clue that the ball even was tossed in the first place, right?
I like that point of
view. So I've changed my thoughts on that. But if you just kind of let the kids go a little bit and tell them what to do, not necessarily how to do it, and give them the freedom to sort of self-organize and figure out how to do that.
It's one of the things as we train our coaches, we let them know, I don't need you to describe everything. This kid's going to get one thing right. And if he makes contact, I want you to throw your arms up in the air and scream yay, and I want you to yell his name toward his parents and say, great job, little Johnny. Mrs. Smith, did you see that? Give him a big high five and send him to the back of the line. Or send it wherever he's going next, right? Now you got me all self-conscious about lines. But
well, it's a matter who's the lesson about? Who's the program about? Is it about the coach or how good a coach you are, or is it about the kids? And are the kids having fun and learning? Are they learning while they're having fun? Are they showing whatever their improvement level is? Does it show that, are they showing improvement and seem to be enjoying themselves at the same time?
Yeah, and we find at our level, we've got a lot of just one thing at a time. Kid gets one thing right, give them a big high five, tell them how great they're doing. Because we can't just say, okay, now I need the elbow pointing back to the fence at a 45-degree angle. And these kids don't know their left from their right. And I'm going to talk to them about it.
I mean, I can tell you from, golf is taking a different approach. There's a lot of golfers now. I was about to use a baseball example, but where golf used to be, and that's a big thing that Dr. Gray, Rob Gray is big on, is the ecological approach, and self-organization is something he references often. And it's about like giving what's the external, like what's the output supposed to be, not what's internal. If you focus on the output, right, like what's supposed to happen, rather than focus on internal, you tend to perform a lot better. Like example would be, hey, little Sarah, I want you to take this ball and see if you can toss it into the ring. That's it. Okay. Instead of going, okay, what you need to do, Sarah, is you need to line your rack. You need to line your hand up with the ring, okay, and slowly take it back, okay, to about where it's, I don't know, where it's kind of even with your hip, just slightly farther back than your hip, 15 degrees from your hip. And now you're gonna slowly but surely accelerate your hand forward and release roughly 25 degrees from your hip. And like, she's like, what are you talking about, man?
15 words she's never heard before.
No, just toss the ball in the ring. Okay, you missed it. Figure out how you can do it again. How you can do it again. Okay.
That's
golf. New age golf guys, rather than going, okay, you need to stand sideways and the ball needs to be just kind of off the front, just inside the front foot. We're going to take that club face back, blah, blah. I'm not a golf coach, but I know I've studied enough about coaching in general that I've heard this from golf coaches. They're like, hey, get sideways, line it up, bash the hell out of it. See what happens. Oh, you hit it sideways. Okay, let's figure out how we can change that club face a little bit so it actually goes straight down the fairway. Oh, good, you did it. Okay, good. I mean, they're just like bash the living crap out of it. Okay, and get the body organized to where you can hit the ball using maximum force. And that's kind of, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that I've heard and read on the golf side that's what's going on is just letting kids grip it. And, like Tin Cup said, you had the long poem of how to hit a golf swing. He said, and then if you remember that movie, and then she's like, what? She had no clue. He's like, of course there is another method. And she's like, great. What's that? He goes, grip it and rip it, and she's like, perfect. I'll just do that, Not to say that tennis is a little bit different because unlike golf and unlike baseball, whereas in golf, the ball needs to land in the fairway, you have much more space. Tennis is a little bit more, as I tell the parents and players, a little bit more of a delicate type sport because it takes a lot of feel. You have to land the ball in a relative small space compared to a baseball field or a golf course, obviously. So a little bit more of a delicate sport in terms of how much power you're actually putting into it. But I think making it where, in a nutshell, for me, it's about getting the kids to rally. Like, can the kids rally? Once they can start rallying and feel like, I don't care about forehands, backhands. I mean, I got kids. I got a kid right now that's 12 years old. He has 2 forehands, and he's pretty darn good. He serves lefty.
On both sides.
What's that?
One hand on both sides.
Yeah. And I've tried for 2 years to get him to hit a backhand. And finally, I'm like, you know what? Screw it, man.
Yeah.
You rip that righty forehand. Go for it, man.
I watched a guy, if you ever knew Jordan Cox, played at GGC, played on tour for a little bit. And his coach, when I was at, I guess it's about the same time, you and I were last in the same room at the same time, in kind of mid-2000s, his coach had a 2-handed forehand and a 1-handed backhand.
Yeah, I played a guy like that once in college.
And it was just
the most bizarre thing I've ever seen.
Strangest thing. But then the grip changed, and I keep looking at all of it thinking it's just inefficient. Like, I can't imagine being top 100 in the world with that kind of inefficiency within your game. But hey, some guys pull it off. Yeah. But with the kids, there's so much that we just let them, I don't want to say get away with, but it's basically let them get away with. Let them run over there and try to hit the ball with the stick. And let them have fun doing it, because that's what brings them back. And what we try to do is are they having fun? We've actually had some parents come to us and ask how many kids are in the group. And when somebody asks you, hey, how many kids are in each group? What are they asking from your point of view?
Yeah, they're doing math in their head to figure out how much money is this pro going to make in this hour. He's charging me $100 for a 6-week or 4-week session. That I've done the math. That's $18 an hour that he's charging. He's got 10 kids. This guy's making $180 an hour. This is ridiculous.
Exactly.
It's highway robbery here.
Sometimes we get the opposite. We actually find out and go, we want to make sure there are enough kids in the group that it's fun and they meet new people.
Oh, that's great.
I'll
never forget the time at when I was at Druid Hills where I had a parent walk on the court, and she told me, she said, I think you're charging too much. And literally, we're standing on the hard courts. There's 4 hard courts at Druid Hills. We literally had about 8 kids on each court. Okay. So there's 36 kids on 4 courts. And she walks in, she's like, I just feel like it's just too expensive. I said, well, everything's expensive. I mean, if you're gonna view everything your kid does as an expense and not an investment in their development, both as a athlete and a human being, and everything's expensive. This club's expensive. What are we talking about? And she's like, I just think you're charging too much. I said, look around you. There's 36 people who don't think we're charging too much, or if they do, they're not saying anything. So,
and this is not the time or the place to have this.
Yeah, well, that too. I mean, not to get off subject, but people who, back to the market price thing. I mean, the people who are going to do that, it's unfortunate because, parents who are, and look, things are expensive, right? And I really do try to make it, obviously economical for myself, but not to the point where it's really hamstringing parents. I'm really sensitive to that fact, but at the same time, I mean, kids are expensive, man, as we all know. And so that's hard, because then what happened, the reason I bring that up is because what happens with that is your YouTube guy, who every lesson has to be some sort of milestone, right? Like, it's just, I mean, she's just getting better and better and better. And I gotta get a return on my investment here with my tennis player.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And in that case, we have those different types of parents. And every once in a while, like I said, we've had two or three, and I say two or three, we've been doing this a while. Two or three parents, interestingly enough, recently saying, I want to make sure there are enough kids in the group, like not questioning the math, enough kids in the group that my kid gets to interact socially. That
Yeah.
they wanted the big group, which, like I said, you wouldn't have expected that. I've never heard of that, but we also are attuned to that, to realize the big groups and that fun, to make sure the other 50% of the parents that really enjoy watching their kids running around and having fun, that aren't questioning whether or not their topspin is developing quick enough, because they can hardly walk, much less hit topspin. And the other parents that just love it and they get to watch, and it's great fun. So I think there's a place for some of that. And I looked through your argument against jail, which I know isn't a 100%, it has zero place, but from my point of view, to say, okay, does it have its place? And jail is just the example, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about,
We're talking about coaching approaches. We're just
coaching in general.
Yeah.
Talking about how do you manage your lesson plan, because everything else we do is also fun. It isn't like, all right, we've done a bunch of work now and now we get to play a game. We get the question, what's the next game, Coach Shaun? It's all games. Everything we do is games. What's the phrase? It's non-linear pedagogy, I think is
nonlinear pedagogy. Yeah.
the fancy way of saying it. But it's all games. It's all fireball and smash and catchy bug and all the fun things that we do. So when we go to do the fun game, it isn't we were serious for a while and now we're just having fun in that old school way. And I like to think I'm using it within the parameters that make sense, without kids standing in line. So I went through your points of saying, here are the negative aspects of jail and where it can go wrong. And I tried to make sure, I said, do I do any of those things? And I really appreciate it when you say, not to toot my own horn about your articles, I really appreciate that guys like you do this, because it even takes someone like me, who I've been doing this as long as you. I feel like I'm good at what I do, but to be able to look out and have somebody else's point of view, to be able to look at it and say, well, maybe I do need a change. I wrote down 6 or 7 different things that we'll probably add 1 or 2 of them next week from things you've mentioned. To be able to say, oh yeah, I like that. We'll throw that in. We'll mix that in. We'll do that a little bit differently next time. And it's one of the things GoTennis is working on doing. It's one of the things we want this Atlanta Tennis Podcast to do, which is make everything better, even better. I mean, things are good. We've got good coaches in the area. If anybody's in your area, obviously we promote you to say, look, Ben Hesley's a great coach. If you don't believe him, if you don't believe me, come to the podcast, check it out, listen to him, read his blog, check out the online websites and things like that, where people can learn more about what's out there, but also understand quality when they see it.
Yeah. Oh, and again, I don't like jail personally, but I wasn't trying to and again, part of the article was just kind of me having fun as a writer, just throwing stuff out there.
Yeah.
I remember, I'll say this, I remember years ago, we were helping the USTA folks create the next generation curriculum. And we're throwing spaghetti on the wall, so to speak. Everybody's got their drill, their game, here's what we do. We do this game and that game and blah, blah. And it was, it was supposed to be rally based and stuff, but, or the kids feeding to each other, So, but I remember we're sitting in this meeting. We've been there for it seemed like 3 or 4 hours. And finally one coach in the room goes, you guys know tennis is a game, right? And we kind of look at each other and we're like, he's like, tennis is a game. Like, tennis itself is a game. Like, we don't get kids, and this gets in Jorge's, you mentioned Jorge earlier, Jorge's big on this. Like how much match play are you actually doing in a practice, right? Like we want to go a lot of instruction, a lot of coach instruction. And then the lesson's over, you guys go play matches. And in reality, they should be playing matches as part of practice. You know, I mean, one game, like maybe gel for you, for us is champs and challengers. We play champs and challengers, red ball. Once they're able to somewhat rally. When I say somewhat rally, we call it the three. We do a drill called 3-ball, and we do it with young kids that can. And 3-ball is where basically one player feeds, the other player, their partner, has to hit it back, and then the feeder has to hit it back over. So that's 1, 2, 3 balls. If they can do 3-ball, then they can play champs and challengers, right? And champs and challengers might be ugly. Man, it might be a one feed. You feed the ball over, and the kid misses, and you're over as champ. Okay, so we're not having like extensive rallies, but they're playing the game. And so we get, whereas a lot of programs, hey, coach, can we play gel at the end of practice? Our guys say, can we play champs and challengers? Now, I found issues with champs and challengers because, like I said earlier, I'm trying to be an equal opportunist when it comes to development. What happens in champs and challengers?
The winners play more.
The winners get to play a ton, right? Yeah. So in recently, I have in my program tried to introduce a 3-point or a 5-point limit, where if you win 3 points in a row or 5 points in a row, then you have to come back over, right? And whoever played
scoring that way, and throw in the tennis fractal style scoring and say, you win 4 points, you got a game, go mark your game and get out of there.
Right.
Like 4-point maximum, teach them some of those, because we're always looking for ways to teach scoring. And what we'll have to do is have you back on at some point, and talk scoring, because I'm sure you've got some ideas there as well.
Oh, I'll tell you what, I didn't realize this until, we have kids that are, if you join, in the country club world, if you join a country club, you probably know something a little bit about tennis, right? You're joining for the golf, you're the tennis, the pool, the social aspect, all that good stuff. I never really had much trouble teaching kids how to play, really, if that makes sense. And now for a while we had the Wii that was really helpful, because kids played Wii tennis and they knew how to keep score and what side to serve from also. But if you really think about how this game is played, trying to explain that to a 7 or 8-year-old,
not easy.
It's like, this game is stupid. Like I have to stand on this side, serve it into this box, but then when we start playing, I can hit it anywhere. And if I do that, I get 15 points. Then I go this other side, which is called the ad side. I don't know why it's called the ad side. It's called the ad side. I know why, but now I serve it into this box. Yeah. But then if I miss it, I get to serve it again. But if I make it in and he misses, he doesn't get to do that again.
Like I said,
and they're like, "What?"
You back on.
I had a kid last summer, Shaun, that was really good. This kid was a great kid, and he could really rally on an orange ball court. He was 11 years old, wasn't an athlete, didn't really play sport. He swam, and I've been in many arguments with swim parents who their kids Michael Phelps at Dynamo, and they come out and you can't catch a ball. And I'm like, okay, if you want me, like, swimming is hard. It is hard, and it's highly technical. But tennis is more of an open skill sport. If you want to know what tennis is like, next time your kid goes to the pool, I'll stand on the side and throw balls at him and see if he can catch them. All right, while he's swimming. That's what tennis is. So, but he was a good swimmer. But other than that, wasn't much of a ball sports athlete, right? Yeah. And he tried soccer, but he doesn't like contact. So being like close to other kids, he didn't like that. But so tennis would be good. And he could rally. He could really rally. But you know what got him? The freaking scoring. He freaked out when we were trying to play practice matches at summer camp because he couldn't comprehend serve it in this box and 15 and 40. And it's like, now we do drop feed games to 7. He was fine.
Right.
But real tennis, it blew his mind, and it was just. I mean, he literally had a panic attack on court one day at camp.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not, and this we're laughing, but this is serious. I mean, this is a hard game to learn how to play.
Yeah.
And as I tell people all the time, this is a hard game to play because, and we had fun in the room at the GPTA party when I was lucky to get the Independent Pro of the Year award, which was surprising, but I never thought I'd win that award, but it was pretty cool. Way to them to show my new business. But that my realization is that tennis is like super hard. I mean, in coaching kids in other sports, in baseball and basketball and soccer, well, a lot of kids that play ultimate frisbee, you can kind of, there's some showstoppers that like to be in the action and stuff, but if you're an apprehensive kid, you can kind of hide, right? Like if you play soccer, you can, and I'm not knocking soccer people, okay? But in soccer, like the ball isn't always coming to you, right? You're not always in the action. So you can kind of hang out on the soccer field and run up and down and be sort of quasi, part of the action, but you're not really in it. But in tennis, it's pretty evident right away if you're not any good at it.
Yeah.
So similar to baseball, you go up there and bat and everyone's watching it, 7-year-old coach pitch batting practice, and you swing and miss 50 times. Everyone knows you're not good. So that's a really hard thing mentally for a kid. But then think about tennis. When we play a tennis match, baseball, you get up there, you get 3 strikes, you swing and miss 3 times, you go back to the dugout, and we reflect on that experience. And there's a lot of time that you have to chill out before your next at bat, right? In tennis, Shaun, if you and I are playing, and when I step up, game 1, point number 1, and you ace me, you hit a 95-mile-an-hour serve down the tee, and I don't get to go back to the dugout. I got to walk to the other side and have you hit at me again. And we got to do that like 50 times. Okay. So I tell people all the time, tennis is one of the toughest mental emotional sports out there. Probably the toughest, because it's continuous. It never stops until it's eventually over for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we'll get you back on. Let's schedule that when we're going to talk scoring, because I'd like to know your thoughts. We are always looking for ways to help people understand the scoring, and I've got my ways, and I'm sure you've got yours. So I'd love to put those together. And so I think we've come to
we've talked for a while, man. We've talked. I don't know if we've talked about gel. I think more it's more of a coaching style. Whoever does gel or doesn't do gel is are you make sure you're athlete centered, not so much coach centered. And as a coach, don't feel like you have to control the situation as much, right? We call it sage on the stage, right? The parents should look out and see the kids having fun, and the activities that you do should engage the kids. The environment engages the kids, not the boisterous coach that yells and screams and hits high moon balls in the air.
I like to do.
Now, a coach can do that. A coach needs to be engaging. A coach needs to be motivating and positive and energetic. That was the word I was looking for. Energetic coach, right? We don't want any Eeyores out there, but we also need to make sure we're not the main focus of it. We're setting the scene. We're facilitators. We're creating the environment for the kids to learn and grow.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right. Well, yeah, I think we've blown past our typical 45 minutes. We'll chop it up into little sections. But here's where we talk about jail. Here's where we talk about this.
Sound bites. We will like that's what I feel like.
Exactly. I don't think anybody's going to listen to you and me go on for an hour and a half.
You're right.
Well, maybe there's a market for it. The Joe Rogan of tennis.
Yeah.
But I would like to talk specifically about scoring at some point. So let's schedule that. And otherwise, we will stay in touch. And what do you have coming up next? You got anything for spring? What's going on with Bull Shark Sports?
Yeah. Spring session starts next week, both at Briarcliff Woods Beach Club and at Linmore Woods. So we're excited about that. Baseball is in full swing. I'm coaching baseball teams as well as doing some private baseball coaching. So I'm kind of split in the springtime between baseball field and tennis courts. So it's getting busy. So,
and that's bullsharksports.net, not .com.
That's right. Bullsharksports.net.
I like it. All right, good. Well, Ben, I appreciate it again. And like I said, we'll have you on soon and we'll talk